Hello and welcome. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Father, for the day. Thank you, audience, as always, for being here, for your active listening. Because as you know, I love your feedback, I love the questions. And today, and I know I say this often, but it's the truth. Having a conversation is a privilege. And it's really a privilege when you are able to have a conversation like we get to here that's a little different than a lot of conversations. And I'm going to read to you just to make sure that and I don't think I can do her justice actually, a little bit about our incredible guest today. We've got ourselves Dr. Allison Alford, and she is in the house and ready to have a conversation. Yes, right. Um, a different conversation about women and our roles in the household and our roles at that limbo time of life as women and the roles that we play that are not discussed as often as necessary. Dr. Alford, I get to call her Allison, is a communication expert. She's an author and a speaker, and she researches and her work centers on the often invisible roles. That's what I was looking for, invisible roles that women play in families and communities. You know, adult daughters, let's say that. She has a PhD and MA in communication skills from the University of Texas, Hook 'em, and nearly 2 decades of university level teaching. She's at Baylor now. And I was talking to her pre-show about her days, and let's just say they're full. Between teaching, she's researching, and all the things. She also, she brings academic depth and heartfelt clarity to every conversation about gender, identity, relational responsibility, and she has a book coming up. Yay. Good, good daughtering. I mean, how exciting is that? I could actually read more and more, but we want to dive in so we can share as much in this one conversation as possible. Doc, welcome.
Woohoo! Thank you
Oh,
so much. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure and a privilege to get to have these conversations, especially with smart, thoughtful, beautiful women.
goodness gracious. Okay, so yay. See y'all later. That was fun. Okay, let's talk. Let's just dive in. Share with the audience, if you will, what brought these invisible, right? This incredible, this invisible work
Mhm, mhm.
of daughters. How did that come about for you?
Yeah, that's a good story. I was in graduate school, and this was over a decade ago, and I was reading some stuff in a sociology class. And they gave us a an article to read, and it was a lady from the 80s, Michaela Di Leonardo. She wrote this really cool paper, and it was called something like The Female World of Holiday Cards and Letters.
Mm,
And right there, you right off the bat, you're kind of like, okay, I'm
yeah.
familiar with the female world of holiday cards and letters. And basically, she wrote about how women often do this stuff that's so important for our social life. You know, we, especially down here in Texas, I was raised to write thank you notes. And then I became a wife and a mom, and I was preparing holiday cards every year. And anybody who's done those things knows that takes some time, effort, some money, and you have to remember to do it. And if you don't do it, you might feel a little guilty. And so I was reading this article, and she was talking about how women do these kinds of social things that really keep us all connected. And and the article, she was really talking about family life, like being a wife, and if you have an extended family and there's like Aunt Sally is not married and doesn't have anywhere to go, and it's the women who remember to invite her and remember to put a gift under the tree for her, or to have something special to include her. And
Mhm.
that's women's jobs. But to men and to society, it's just considered natural, or it's just something women do. Like we're just naturally thinking of all these extra things to do and that we enjoy doing them. And I thought, that is true, but we aren't just magically better at writing cards or putting stamps on a letter. There's a lot of this that comes from our upbringing, and there's a lot of the responsibility to do it. We do it sometimes because we want to, but sometimes because we do feel guilty if we don't, like we're not good enough, or we're not doing what our mom expected or the way we were raised to do something. And your job when you're in school is to think about, what do I want to think about? What do I want to study? What am I noticing? And as I became more aware of this invisible, unpaid labor of women in families, it began to occur to me, that's happening in my own family as well, as a daughter to my mom and dad. And I have such a great relationship with my mom and dad, and I have done for, many decades. And they're wonderful people. But I started to realize, daughters never get any credit for all the stuff we do to try to make our parents feel good, to try to make them included, to make sure that we all, gel really well at events, to create events, to get the grandchildren to them and give access. And I was like, okay, it's still invisible labor. It's still unpaid. It's taking up mental space, time, energy, maybe finances. But nobody's talking about it. Like, why are we not talking about this sort of extra time consuming thing? And that's what led me to start talking about it, but also doing research on it. I thought, okay, it seems real in my life, but I can't say it's real until I investigate it a little bit more. And so that's what I did.
Well, first of all, incredible. And I have so many questions, and I want to get back to what brings to mind to me is I wonder if how it feeds codependency. I want to start with that. And that different question, not for right now. But
Yeah. Okay.
another question I want to ask is how do you do that research? What is the research that you created that you dive into
Yeah.
regularly?
Yeah. So, research always starts with just a lot of reading. And you go to the reading and you try to think like, okay, well, what's already been written about daughters? And I'm going to read that. And if it's already been written, then I don't need to investigate it anymore.
Right.
And so you might go to look at psychology, and you go to these journals where this peer reviewed research is published, where all the academic, heavyweights write and present their work at conferences and in these journals. They're not like a magazine, they're just like a bunch of academic papers all stuck together. But they're read by other academics. And so there's this kind of oversight to make sure that that's really good research being presented and not just somebody saying whatever they want.
Right.
And so first I went to those areas. I went to look at communication literature. I went to look at psychology literature. I went to look at family studies, childcare, gerontology. I went to look at gender studies, even anthropology. And you try to put any type of keyword that you could think of and look into that. Or if you want to picture, the way it was when I first started, it's like you're looking through a card catalog. You remember
Oh,
those? I love a
oh
good card
yes.
catalog.
Oh yeah.
And you find the reference, and then you go get the book, and then you read the book. And what you read is like, okay, I knew that, I knew that, I knew that. Oh, but that right there, that's interesting. And you come across some little ideas. And as a researcher, your job is to compile what is already known, and then also what is missing, what is not yet known. So as I read the research, I recognized that we do know quite a lot about daughters in adolescence. There's quite a lot of material out there also in the medical world. What happens when daughters go through this adolescent change in their bodies? And there are some there's a lot out there as well about what happens when our parents are in old age and they really need a lot more care. And again, a lot of that might be healthcare. How do daughters step in? But if you kind of see what that means, it means that between 18 and 65, there wasn't a lot there about positive experiences or everyday experiences of women in the middle of life,
Mm,
where you are really independent and your parent is independent, but you just like hanging out with each other, or you don't like hanging out with each other, but you still go see them for the holidays, or go on vacation once every 5 years. And there's like a really wide variety of types of relationships, and some of them are really healthy and some of them are not. So there's codependency, there's abusive relationships, there's substance abuse, there's all kinds of ways that you can have toxic or difficult relationships. And there are some people who study that, narcissists, and these types of traits. But what I notice is there's not really anybody talking about the rest of us who are really kind of okay. Like we're just kind of okay with our parents. We're not, it's not perfect. She's not perfect, I'm not perfect, but I feel pretty okay about it. You know,
hmm
I knew that I particularly wanted to hear about women like me who really, really love their mother, but can't always figure out where things go wrong, that come up with these little arguments, or we have little disconnects, or I feel like we're on different pages. And, you know, you do really love them, you want to see them, but at the same time, there are days or times where it's like sandpaper. And I wanted to know about those women. And that is what I realized was missing. So I set about doing research studies where I asked women, talk about daughtering. What do you do? What is your communication style like? How often do you talk to your mom? What do you say to her? How do you argue? What do you think about? And when I did my very first study, the first thing I noticed was that women could not really talk about themselves as active participants. They would just tell you stuff their mom is doing. Well, my mom does this, and my mom's great at this, and my mom's always saying this. And they would just talk about their mom doing mothering. And it was such a struggle for women to talk about their own active, intentional, effortful connection behaviors in their relationship, in their family relationships. And that's when I realized, man, we've got a really big gap in society where women don't have language to talk about it. We don't have access to talking about this with other women who are doing daughtering. And that is what we all need. It's a beautifully simple concept once you're made aware of it,
Right.
and made aware that daughtering is everything a daughter does to connect within a family, to keep each other bonded, to show love, to resolve conflict. It's everything associated with the adult daughter role. that you do in everyday circumstances. And it can be things that you actively do, like driving a car and going to pick up some soup for someone. But it can also be just thinking about them, or it
Hmm.
can be using your emotions to try to solve or smooth the situation. And it can even be performing identity, which is acting like their daughter, even when they're not around. And so there's this, all of this was revealed through continuing research, which was interviews with women and, what we use is in social sciences, the social scientific method.
You know, again, there's so much here. I believe, and I'll share this with the audience, when the doc and I were speaking last week, I believe, I, as many of you all know, I'm one of 11 kiddos, and I'm number six. There's six girls and five boys. Just recently, our oldest brother, as I like to say, went on to heaven above. And at our mother's service, at her celebration of life, and trust me, we all would have liked to have spoken anyway, the five brothers shared about mom. And one of my wonderful brothers, number four in the 11, he shared when he first got up there. He's a wonderful speaker. Anyway, he said, I don't know how many of you out there have kiddos, but I hope you have girls because the girls do the active work. I thought that was very interesting. Number one, I so appreciated
Mhm.
that he had this appreciation
Yeah.
for my wonderful sisters and for myself, for the six girls. And it was the first time that I had ever heard acknowledged daughtering, if you will.
Yeah.
And he was, which is also interesting, at that time, speaking of my parents, and as you said, there was much, you found a lot of research when your
Mhm.
parents are older.
Yeah.
And that was, and I'll double check with him, but I believe I'm corrected that that's what he was referring to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then this other part, and trust me, we have wonderful brothers.
Yes.
One of the things that you mentioned was that we're just doing these things, not talking about,
Yeah.
and this
Yeah.
other part, and it's the relational part in these middle years. God willing, if we all have these middle years. However, it's this unspoken expectation, not only of the other members of the family, or
Mhm.
let's just say you're an only child.
Right.
I have a lot of very dear, dear friends that are only children, and the expectations within maybe the extended family or with the parents, the daughtering.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very interesting because there is definitely expectation.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit before. I always want to make sure to say nobody's bashing the sons or the men,
Yeah.
because lots of men do so many wonderful things for their family. And I am raising a son who I fully anticipate will be, an anchor in our family. And my husband is such a fabulous son for his mom. Um, and has given me a lot of insight into men and what men think about and what they do. And I think the key difference that you identified there is that men are not expected to do it. And because they're not expected to do it, meaning this connection in families and the preparing and the thinking and the gathering and the reminding and the planning and the thanking and the complimenting, because they're not expected to do it, they just do a lot less, and their minds are centered on other things, and often those things still benefit family, but men are just not asked as much to be these relational beings. So it is beautiful for you to also notice what he did in his
Oh,
comments. He spoke with wisdom, commenting on the the actions that he's seen in his siblings, and that is massive. Just to have someone say, I see you, you are doing it, we are grateful. And many daughters who are doing daughtering, we're pointing out daughtering's hard work, daughtering's a lot of effort. Yeah, we're just trying to point it out and talk about it. We're not saying that we're trying to quit doing it. We just want to know that other people also see it and that it matters and that it's really that substance that helps keep families going. And we all benefit from that.
I love that. And I love that you pointed out, because I hope it sounded, I'll just start with, we asked my dad and mom one time, said, did you have all of us because you and we are Catholic? My
Uh-huh.
dad said, well, sure. However, I knew it would take at least 10 to 12 to take care of us in our older age. And we giggled
Smart.
because yeah, smart. And I think that all my brothers and sisters would agree that it was all 11. And the brother that I mentioned that actually, which is just another something I appreciate about him, was that if it wasn't for he and his beautiful in and out pride, our parents would not have even had the setup in order for us to do other things, if that makes sense. But it's
Yeah.
interesting that you bring this conversation to light, because I do feel it's getting better. And I know, due to your research and your intention to have these conversations, just the
Yeah.
conversation taking place
Mhm.
makes a difference. Like you said earlier, awareness is the beginning.
Yes. And that's so perfect that you said that, because I really did spend quite a bit of time thinking, near the beginning of my research. Well, I just want people to know that daughtering is a thing. It's just a thing. And then I would talk to a lot of people and we'd have these conversations, and people would say, okay, I believe you. Like, it's a pretty simple concept. It's elegantly simple, but we're just kind of, our eyes are open to it. But then, and this is what I go over in the book, the first part is, what is daughtering? Let's just see it in our life. Let's just see that daughtering is happening in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s. Daughtering is happening in, a regular everyday phone call where you just call and say, like, hey, how was work today? To your parent who's still working, to, you call your dad and let him talk about the lawn care that he's doing and the house plants he just bought, because you like talking to him about what makes him happy. So you're doing these regular everyday things, but they are time consuming, and they can take some of your resources and your time and your thinking, and even your finances. I took my family, we went on a big trip, 11 of us, and I set up a photo shoot. And I did that 6 months early. So I was thinking ahead. I booked it. I paid for it. I helped everybody get their outfits. I bought and paid for my mom and dad to have special outfits. And then when the photos were ready, I bought and paid for them to be printed, and I wrapped them up as Christmas gifts. And I was glad to do it, but it wasn't free. It was time and energy and thought and love. And so the first part is just notice it. And then the next part is talk about it. And then the next part is, okay, now that I'm aware of what it is, what daughtering is, and how it's coming out in my specific family, the next part is, do I want to change it? Do I
Hmm.
want my siblings to do more of their part? Do I want my partner to see that I've been doing all the gifts for their parents and I want them to take it? Do I want to do more? Do I want to do less? Do I want to do more? Maybe I want to do more financially and less phone calls, or vice versa. I'm going to do more home cooked meals and fewer visits. And once you do that, once you just kind of calibrate it, then you can change it. And then you should be able to move towards optimizing daughtering in your life so that you're not doing it because you feel like you're supposed to, or you have to, or you feel guilty about it, but you're doing it in a way that's really alert and aware to the beauty of daughtering and the privilege of daughtering and the privilege of being in a family. But you're gonna not get burnt out. You're going to do just the amount you can do for that season in your life.
You know, I love, again, I love it so much because I think about families. Well, first of all, what first comes to my mind is our mom and dad, and again, I believe all 11, and if David could share this, he would too. They are our earthly heroes. They were incredible, completely imperfect, but imperfectly perfect for our group.
Uh,
You know, God must have thought we all had a lot to learn because there were so many of us doing so many things we needed to learn from. But what I think about, first of all, I think my dad was right, certainly for our group. It took all 11 and everyone having so much in common, yet being so individually different. And it took the gifts of every person in that family. I believe if my mom and dad were here, they would say, oh my gosh, this has been unbelievable, you know, their entire shakeout. But I think about this right now. My kiddos are in that phase.
yeah.
And I have two precious daughters and this incredible son. And, you know, thank you, Father, a daughter in love and two sons in love. So it's all been great. And they do those things. And I am thinking, you know, you get to your own, you think, oh my goodness, I do think that not only do they recognize one another for the kindnesses and the time and talent and treasure that they are sharing in order to stay in contact with us, right? And
Mhm.
to make sure we're included, or
Yeah.
I don't know, this daughtering. And I also want to acknowledge the families that there's just a son. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
That son does the daughtering.
Or they do the sunning, right?
Or the
Remember, we
sonning, you know,
do.
I'm just trying to say that's the same. We're calling this
It's the
daughtering as
same.
women,
I think
but it's
when
this love.
the
It's
care, where they're doing all the care provisions, that's like the
yes,
researchy term I would put
care.
on it,
I like that.
where sometimes you call it social support, or sometimes we call it social reproductive labor, because it's the stuff that has to happen for families to be in existence. And it's so beautiful when we do have partners to share it with, or when we have siblings to share it with, because there absolutely are families where they're only children, and so
Mhm.
they're these singletons and they don't have anyone else to share it with except maybe their partner, spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend. And when we share the sort of labor of giving care and giving love, then we are really also receiving love from
Mm,
those other people.
mm.
If you're not able to put together the uh I don't know, the family Easter holiday, and your sibling says, I'll do it. I'll host this year. Then you're like, oh, and you see the sibling is doing it for the family, but also for you. Or sometimes what happens is I go to my parents' house and my husband will, he'll see like, oh my gosh, I've been so busy and my brain is a little, fried. And so he'll be like, I am gonna keep your parents a little bit busy. I'm going to occupy them. And so he'll have these topics or talks, or he'll bring something up, or he'll say, let's go out, let's all go do something. And he kind of helps me by taking the spotlight on him, but also doing the entertainment, figuring out where we're gonna order for dinner. And those are normally things I would do, not only because I'm the daughter, but because these are my parents. And he takes it and does it without me having to ask him to do it. So it's a double gift. And
Oh,
he loves my parents very much. So he's also getting to engage and connect with them directly. So it's a double, triple, quadruple benefit, but it's not it's especially in men, it's not just naturally there. There is, some either training socially or from our partners. But I think we're seeing that the newer generations, the younger generations, are getting this kind of social awareness younger and earlier and being great partners. So it's whether we call it partnering,
yeah.
sonning, childing, I
Yes.
think the key is giving it an active verb, that being in a family is not a passive endeavor. And you don't get to just sit back and be a receiver. To be in a family and get the benefit of being in a family, you must be an active participant.
I love this so much. Active percent. They're two daughters. So we're going to go back to the daughtering term. One being my sister. She's number 8. Oh my gosh. Everybody needs to meet her. Great storyteller. And just so wonderful. And my husband, who is one of 5, and he has 2 precious siblings that have gone ahead of everyone. These daughters were the only daughters in both my husband's family and in my family that were in. Now it's a little further down the road that we're speaking as far as the parents' ages. They were the only daughters living in the same city with the parents.
Yeah.
And I can promise you, because I was, well, I'll just say I was the only one, maybe everybody else was aware of it. I was guilty that all of a sudden, certainly I was aware of the incredible time, talent, effort, organization. Let me tell you, typing out medicines, meeting with the caregivers, a lot of stuff. And we are talking a little bit further down out of the
Yeah.
cap age that we're speaking about. However, it was unbelievable
Mhm.
how much she was doing. And then
Mhm.
my sister-in-law, I saw that same thing.
Mhm.
And first of all, I want to point out both, it was done with such care and such love, and they wanted to.
Yeah.
However, it became, and it
You
was,
can still
that's
burn out.
when we realized this is ridiculous. We are not actively helping enough to my
Yeah.
precious sister. And I'd be saying both their names right this minute had I asked them, but I didn't. So I can't. But I will tell you this, once we became aware, back to that, be aware of
Yeah.
those that are providing this love and support that they want to share. However, just like anything else, and I will say this too, to your husband's credit and benefit, the whole thing about that is, and with all my heart, I believe that when we take care of ourselves,
Mhm.
we're helping others.
Oh,
When
yeah.
we do this and share this time, talent, and treasure, we
Yeah.
receive untold gifts. What happens is, in your example, is that it becomes more than what we have to share.
Mhm.
whether that's time, talent, or treasure. And even though we receive a gift, we are not giving what we can if we are doing that to the detriment of our own self care.
Right, right. And how do we fill up that bucket? How do we grow or expand that ability to self care? Well, first, it's super helpful for parents and siblings and partners just to say, that was some good daughtering. You are really killing it. You nailed it. And
Yes.
my mom, as soon as I talked about this research with her over a decade ago, she started telling me that was some good daughtering today.
Oh,
And, whether it was just walking around TJ Maxx and listening to some stories, and when she knew, like, hey, you were a busy professional, but you gave me time and we went to lunch. And that's not, of course, it benefited both of us, but she just recognized that it was a gift. And she said, thank you for that gift. And so that will fill your cup if people say thank you, and notice it. It's also helpful to share, as you said, to have siblings to share in the work of parents just want to have time and attention and have someone hang out with them and call them. And you could be a parent who's 40, I'm 43 and I have a child about to go off to college. So I'm not quite there with an adult child, but I'm almost there. And I think sometimes what I love the most is that he just wants to have lunch with me, or he chooses to watch Netflix Stranger Things with me instead of where he could be out, doing golf with his buddies. And I try to value every little morsel as something that he has chosen to give to me. But I also, as a mom, and what I think I could recommend to people listening is, if you are overburdened by your daughtering role, maybe you have a grumpy parent, maybe you have an older parent, maybe you have a financially strapped parent that you've been sending money. If you're becoming overburdened, you have to set the boundaries. You have to tell people, you have to talk to your parent, you have to talk to your siblings, your partner, and you have to really take care of your well-being, because none of your daughtering is going to be sweet and kind and loving if you get into that bitter
uh,
place. And you don't have to be, daughters don't have to be sweet, kind, and loving all the time, but you need to make sure that you are coming from a place where you feel generous and loving, and that you have enough to give. And you can only do that by talking about it. And that's what we're doing today. We're revealing it. We're bringing it out in the open, and we're saying, go have a conversation with another daughter about daughterhood and what it's like to be a daughter, and what are some tips, what are some suggestions, and what could you do more of and what could you do less of, and just share that lived experience with your peers and others who love you.
I think that this is so wonderful. And I want to highlight again, we could talk about this all day. I'm also thinking about one of my sisters, she called our parents every single solitary night. Every
Yeah,
single solitary night, even if she was traveling.
right.
Well, there are so many things here. And I mean, I'd love to go on the list of what all the 11 did because it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
What that brings to mind is there are people that do that completely alone.
alone.
And
Hmm.
any of you that have done that alone, and there are also people that are not biological daughters and sons
Oh
that do
yeah.
this for other people. You know,
Oh yeah, I love to talk about, daughtering your neighbor who
yes,
lives alone, but you can
yes,
just see once a chat here and there, and you stand out in the yard and you talk to them, and you ask about their cat and you ask
yes,
about their rose bushes. And that is daughtering.
it's
Or
daughtering.
there are people who have a work dad, and they've got somebody at work and they kind of like, you're just my work dad. I got to check on you. How's your health? Are you taking your baby aspirin? So we really can do daughtering in a lot of ways. And Daughters are really, I think one of the hallmarks of being a daughter is you're thinking about them, you're thinking about the future, you're wondering how they're doing, you're worrying about how they're doing. And that can be really hard for only kids. And so if you know an only in your life, reach out to them and
Reach
say,
out.
I'm just thinking about daughtering and how you've been thinking about this and doing this all on your own for decades and decades. And
Ah,
that sounds tough.
ah,
And just so kind and generous to notice, because daughters really do want to feel like our daughtering matters and that people value it, even if it's our peers who see it and value it.
you
And
just that you're giving people permission to be appreciated.
yes,
I think that it's like, oh, that's okay. And of course I want
oh,
to,
yeah.
but it's
Oh,
like,
oh, I'm so
you.
humble.
Thank you for appreciating that. And I hope that the audience hears that. Daughtering is what we're calling it. And this can be male, female, with children, without children, but we are all, there is somebody we are a daughter or a son to. We were born to someone. And our
Yeah,
precious neighbors with no kiddos, they have needs. And your smile matters. And you're checking. I love you said, let's check on the new bushes, the rose
yeah,
bush.
the rose
I
bushes.
love that
Yeah,
so much because, first of all, what a great thing to check on. But I know we could keep going on, and I know the audience has a lot of questions.
yeah,
A lot of questions, and please send them in. We're going to have another conversation to follow up.
love it.
How's the research going? And of course, the the doc's wonderful book, her links, information, all you all know where to get those right here on the podcast, on the website, all so you can get in touch. Send her direct questions. She's always doing research, let me tell you. I know that. And let's be okay with the need to be appreciated. Let's be okay with it. And let's be okay with needing help because it gets too big mentally, financially, in whatever way. And let's support and talk about that it's being very courageous to reach out for help. Greatest show of strength, as far as I'm concerned, is asking for help. And I just cannot tell you how much I've appreciated this. It's a delight. It's important. Keep up the research. Everybody get in touch with the doctor, and we will be together again. Any one last sign off note?
You are already enough, right as you are, as the daughter you are. So love yourself and love those family relationships that you're in.
Ah, I love it. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Doctor. I am so appreciative of you. Thank you, audience. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Hook 'em.